Yes, it's a battle between what is the ugliest vehicle on sale in Australia today, in my opinion, and a vehicle that's becoming, or seems like it's trying to become, the most expensive vehicle on sale in Australia. I've got the new Kia Tasman and the Isuzu D-Max. Now these two aren't completely fair or even rivals, I guess, because I've got the X-Line version of the Tasman, which is second from the top, while the X-Terrain is kind of the flagship, but if you include the Blade, then it is second from the top as well. But the Blade is more of a sort of hardcore off-roader. The top model of the Tasman, the X Pro, does come with all-terrain tyres, but it's not really like a hardcore model like the Blade and, you know, Nissan Navara, Warrior and vehicles like that. It's just a sort of upgraded pack, all the luxuries and so on, and yeah, the all-terrain tyres. Now this design, if I see a pretty lady walking down the road, I'm attracted to looking at that, and I'm gonna continue to look at that until my wife slaps me. Whereas if you see me walking down the road, you're not gonna continue looking at me because I'm not attractive. Whereas that's the same as this. It's not a pleasing thing to look at, in my opinion. It's got these weird horizontal bars that go across the wheel arches. I know it looks a little bit different, but they don't do anything. I mean, they kind of can protect the side if you're off-roading or something like that instead of scratching the paintwork, but then you've got to replace those anyway. And then the front end is just pure yuck, in my opinion. Like, why are the headlights down here in the corner? Kind of looks like a fish with its eyes on the side of its head, and it's got these fake sort of bonnet clips that don't do anything. The bonnet shut line is actually here as well. You might think it's like a clamshell that the whole thing lifts up, but it's not. It's just, it drops off, or it just cuts off just here. So it just seems very awkward and unnatural, which is a real shame because the rest of the package is quite good. The interior is probably among the best, or if not the best in its class in terms of comfort, features, practicality, and then it's got good payload and towing and all of that. It's just let down by a design, in my opinion anyway. I mean, there's going to be some people out there that think it looks great, but yeah, I think it just looks not as good as it could, and not as good as pretty much any other ute in this class. Now the D-Max, if you look on Redbook, you'll see the prices have just slowly climbed up quietly in the background. There used to be, started from $70,500 just about 12 months ago. Now it's $73,000 for the top spec X-Line. It used to be about $60,000 about 4 or 5 years ago as well. So it's jumped up $13,000 in not that long. We can thank NVES for that. But how much further is it going to go? Because Isuzu doesn't have any hybrid options, so they're going to have to keep bumping the price up to pay for the NVES rules. It's just, I don't think it's worth $73,000 now. It's gone too far. But anyway, it is still a very good package. I reckon it's one of the best all-rounders out there. If I was buying a ute, I would strongly consider a D-Max because of its all-rounded ruggedness and ability. That's if I was after a ute. I'm not after a ute. I like comfort, I like handling, I like driving dynamics and all of that. So if you are after a ute and you're going to use it, go off-road, put stuff in the back, the D-Max is definitely one you should place somewhere in your top 5 list. Under the bonnet, the Tasman features a 2.2 litre turbo diesel 4-cylinder engine, 154 kilowatts, 440 newton meters, paired to a 8-speed automatic with part-time or rear-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive. There is a 4A mode as well. In the D-Max, you've got the trusty 3-litre 4JJ turbo diesel 4-cylinder, 140 kilowatts and 450 newton meters, matched to a 6-speed automatic, also with a rear-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive system, but it doesn't have a 4A mode, so there's no automatic mode that you can drive with 4-wheel drive on the dry tarmac. So for this test, I'm just going to run the Tasman in rear-wheel drive to make it fair. Although, as I said, you could put this in 4A and get a bit more traction. It might be a little bit quicker, although it does cause, or it does, you know, involve a bit more drivetrain load. So it might even out. But if you had slippery conditions, for sure the 4A mode would be quicker. The Tasman also has a sport mode, which the D-Max doesn't have. Now the sport mode in this, I've done a few tests before I started filming with the V-Box, and it is fractionally quicker in sport mode. I've found that with diesels, sport mode is not usually quicker. It's about 50% of the time because it ends up revving the engine too much and over revving. Great for on the sand, or if you're towing or something like that, you want to keep those revs up. But in terms of 0 to 100 or quarter mile performance, it can sort of over rev the engine when you can just click the next gear and use that low down torque to push through the gears. Speaking of torque, this is 10 Newton meters down on the D-Max, but the Tasman does produce about 14, or exactly 14 more kilowatts than the D-Max. The Tasman is a bit heavier than the D-Max. It's 2,281 kilograms versus 2,170 kilograms curb weight for these two specifications, or these two variants specifically. But that means the power to weight ratio is 67.5 kilowatts per tonne in the Tasman and 64.5 kilowatts per tonne in the D-Max. So the Tasman should win this, considering it has a better power to weight ratio and more power, even though it has a little bit of a downside with the torque, 10 Newton meters less torque. As usual, I'll set up the tripod here on this private road for the full quarter mile, including setting it up at the start here, about the 1/8 mile, and then roughly the quarter mile. The camera might be just a bit before the quarter mile, but it'll give you an idea of what a drag race would look like if they were both here. Very similar weather conditions for both runs. And then the figures at the end are the best result I got with the V-Box. So regardless of what the footage might look like, the figures are the best result I got after numerous runs and different attempts, different takeoff methods and all that sort of thing. Let's see how they go. There we go, as kind of expected, the Kia Tasman is a little bit quicker than the D-Max, at least in these trim lines. It does have a better power to weight ratio. It's also got an 8-speed automatic, which could divide up the torque, or it does provide more ratios, more speeds for the available torque. You could argue that the X Pro is more of an even match, I guess. I can put that test together if you want me to, like a virtual drag race the same as this, just to see the difference. I think the X Pro might be a little bit slower because it has the all-terrain tyres, and it will be weighed down a little bit with luxuries and so on. So, I mean, with all-terrains, it's not quite even with the D-Max because the D-Max doesn't come with all-terrains, so it kind of skews it the other way. But I can put that test together if you want me to. Just let me know in the comments. Now, what would I buy out of these two? Well, on design alone, I wouldn't pick the Tasman. I really don't like the design. I mean, it does look pretty good in black because it kind of hides everything and you don't have as much contrast of those elements that kind of stand out or yeah, just don't fit in my opinion. Even the weird beady headlights, they're futuristic, but for this class, you want sort of toughness and sturdiness, something that you can, dependable and all that sort of thing. This, it just looks a bit too futuristic and a bit like a concept car, I reckon anyway. I mean, let me know if you think I'm wrong. But yeah, I just don't think it's quite hit the mark for this class. If this was an SUV, sure, it probably would you know, break through the crowd a little bit. But yeah, as a ute, it just doesn't do it for me, the design. There are a lot of areas though that the Tasman wins. The powertrain, for example, much smoother, much quieter than the D-Max setup. With the 8 speeds, you can get those revs very low on the highway. Not that the D-Max really revs out that much on the highway, but yeah, definitely a much noisier engine, bigger capacity, bigger pistons jumping up and down compared with this 2.2 litre. And it actually sounds like a petrol at some points of the rev range, this does. It's got this kind of bassy note to it, at least from the inside, where you could, yeah, pretty much fool people into thinking it's a petrol. That's how sort of quiet and refined it is. In terms of the handling, I actually think the D-Max is better. It steers nicer. This has got a little bit of what I would describe as diagonal shunting going on, where if you come around a corner and you hit a bump, the sort of drive line pushes tension or energy up diagonally to the front, and it kind of, not bump steers, but feels kind of like a bump steer, whereas the D-Max doesn't do that. It's still, you know, pretty rigid and jiggly as utes are, but this, I feel, it just has this extra little dynamic there where it just shunts around a little bit. A lot of the utes don't feel that nice, but drive a Ford Ranger, and now I'm not a Ford Ranger man, I don't own one, I would never buy one actually, partly because it's got that wet belt design, which is just ridiculous, but I'm just not in the market for this kind of thing. But you drive one of those and it just feels really nice around a country road. It really handles nicely. There's no sort of that shunting feeling. It's not too jiggly. It's firm, but it's not jiggly. Whereas the D-Max is just a little bit sort of firmer, I reckon, compared with the Ford Ranger. This is not firmer, but it's just got that kind of weirdness about it at some points of a corner and over some types of bumps. Normally smaller bumps, little ripples and so on, I find anyway. But it does handle quite nicely. When you turn it in, it doesn't feel like it's going to fall over. There's a little bit of body roll, but it's not too much. Yeah, it feels quite nice to drive around a country road, winding road, for this style of vehicle. It's just not the absolute best, in my opinion, if you were to rank them all. Now, in terms of payloads and towing and all that, this has a 3.5 ton towing capacity, like the D-Max. The D-Max has a GVM of 3,200 kilograms, exactly the same as this. So as you can probably see, at max towing, 3.5 tons, you've got to put about 10% on the tow ball download. It's 8 to 10%, but we'll just say 10 just to be on the safe side. So that's 350 kilograms. So get that 3,200 kilograms of GVM minus the Kerb weight, which is this is heavier, and then minus 350 kilograms, you're left with 569 kilograms for anything inside or anything in this cargo area. In the D-Max, you're left with 680. It's about 100 kilograms more for passengers and cargo. So it is the better option, in my opinion, if you're doing very heavy towing. In terms of off-road, this example doesn't come with a diff lock that I could see anyway, but it does have that 4A mode, which I think is very handy in the real world. If you're on a wet road or on a dirt road or something like that, pulling a boat out of a slippery ramp, I mean, you could engage 4H, it's not going to hurt it, but as long as you don't turn. But yeah, having that 4A mode I think is very, very handy. You can drive down to the snow and so on and just engage that, and you've got that backup of safety and security of it hooking up all 4 wheels if it needs to. You can't do that in the D-Max. So that is a big plus. And then the interior is definitely a win to the Kia. The interior of this thing is absolutely stunning. It's for a ute especially, very practical, cup holders, wireless chargers, lots of little storage options around, connectivity, big touch screen. Yeah, it's got it all. It's got Kia's latest setup in there, and Kia always does a good job with practicality, features, and technologies. So in the end, what would I buy out of these two? To be honest, neither. I wouldn't pay $73,000 for a D-Max X-Terrain. You're very close to the Hilux GR Sport at that price. I would just hunt for that. They're awesome for this style of vehicle. And then this price from $67,990, It doesn't have the history there, so we don't know how it's going to be with long-term ownership, like towing and all that sort of stuff. Long-term, I mean, is it going to wear out the gearbox and all that sort of thing? We just don't know this stuff. Kia does not have a reputation yet for building these types of vehicles. So that does make me hesitate a little bit. And then paying $67,990, excluding on roads, as well for that, I don't know. I think I would go for, yeah, I'd save up for a GR Sport Hilux, or I would probably go down to a Triton, even Navara, great value, or a GWM Canon, not the XSR one, just the one below that, the Vantra or something like that. It's the 2.4, just pretty standard, but the sort of up-spec model. You're saving a lot of money, you're getting a decent package, and yeah, you don't have to worry about putting a paper bag over your vehicle on the driveway. Let me know what you think though. What would you take out of these two specifically? Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts.